before silence claimed its halls, Whitmore Hall lived and breathed like something with a soul. Morning light poured through tall glass windows, painting gold across polished floors and silk curtains, and within that warmth lived a girl untouched by cruelty, a girl who believed love could never fade. Her world was not defined by wealth, but by presence. A father whose quiet strength made everything feel certain, as though nothing could ever truly fall apart. But life rarely warns before it changes. Sometimes it arrives in elegance, in a carriage that glides too smoothly, in a woman whose beauty feels carefully constructed. Lady Drusilla. Her voice was soft, her movements flawless, but behind every gesture was calculation. Some people do not enter lives to belong, they enter to take. At first, nothing felt wrong, just small absences, small silences, until the house that once felt full began to feel watched. Even the air shifted. Laughter faded, footsteps echoed longer than they should, and something unspoken settled into every room. Then, without warning, the foundation of her world cracked. Her father fell, not gradually, not gently, but suddenly, as though time itself had turned against him. Doctors came and went, each leaving with less certainty than the last, and the house began to whisper, quiet fears no one dared speak aloud. The storm that night did not begin outside, it began within her. Each breath he took felt borrowed, each second, fragile. And then, nothing. No final words loud enough to hold on to, no moment to prepare. Just silence, the kind that changes everything. Grief had no time to settle, because control does not wait. It moves quickly, decisively, and without mercy. Her name remained, but everything else was taken, piece by piece, until nothing of her former life remained untouched. The transformation was complete, not into something new, but into something lesser, something controlled. Her new room did not hold memories, it erased them. Cold stone, thin bedding, silence. Days no longer had meaning, only tasks, only effort, only endurance. Then came the moment that removed even the smallest comfort. The water pump failed, and with it, so did any trace of mercy. Repair was possible, but kindness was not, and so a new burden was chosen for her, one designed not to help, but to break. The forest did not greet her, it observed. Every step felt noticed, every shadow alive. And then she found it, Ashwale Stream, beautiful, but indifferent. The water was heavy, but not heavier than the life she carried. Then a sound, close, unmistakable. The forest held its breath, and so did she. And from that silence, something stepped forward. Not chaos, not danger, something unexpected. This was not just an encounter, it was a turning point. The moment her story shifted from survival to something more. The figure that stepped forward did not disturb the night, it settled it. Where fear had once tightened around her chest, something unfamiliar began to take its place. Stillness. Even the forest seemed to recognize the shift. The tension loosened, the silence softened, as though the night itself had decided to step back. He did not look at her the way others did. There was no dismissal, no quiet superiority, only attention, the kind that sees, without reducing. The weight she carried spoke louder than words ever could. Every movement measured, every breath controlled. A life of endurance, revealed in the smallest details. Kindness, when it comes without demand, can feel almost unfamiliar, and yet it appeared, quietly, without expectation. But reality does not pause for moments of peace. The night remained cold, the path remained long, and her life still awaited her return. As she left, she carried more than water. Karma, and behind her, she was not forgotten. Whitmore Hall loomed ahead, unchanged in structure, but heavier in presence. The house no longer welcomed her. It observed, cold and unmoving. Sleep came, but it did not restore, because exhaustion had settled deeper than the body. And when the next night approached, so did something unexpected, anticipation. This time, her steps were not guided by duty alone. Ashwell Stream remained unchanged. Karma. Yet it no longer felt indifferent, and just as before, he was there, not by accident, but by choice. The space between them felt smaller, not in distance, but in understanding. The task that once belonged only to her no longer did. No promises were made, no words exchanged, yet something undeniable began to exist between them. But far from the quiet of the forest, control had begun to slip, and those who rely on control do not ignore its loss. Patterns had changed, absences had lengthened, and suspicion had awakened. And when suspicion finds purpose, it becomes strategy. Karma careful. Karma quiet. Karma precise. For now, the nights remained calm, but calm is often the final breath before something breaks, and when it does, nothing remains untouched. What once felt like coincidence had become something deliberate. He no longer appeared by chance. He returned because he chose to. Because something about her story refused to be ignored. Where others saw a servant, he saw evidence. Fatigue hidden beneath discipline, pain disguised as routine, a life rewritten without consent. There comes a moment when observation is no longer enough, when understanding demands action, and in that moment, his role in her life changed. Opportunity does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it is offered quietly, waiting to be accepted. Hope can be frightening when you have lived along without it, because to hope again is to risk losing everything once more. But even fear cannot hold someone forever, and slowly she stepped away from the life that had confined her, not with certainty, but with courage. Beyond the darkness she had known, there existed something different, a place where silence did not threaten, where walls did not control, where she was not watched, but welcomed. Freedom is not always loud. Sometimes it is simply the absence of fear. And in that quiet space, she began to remember who she was. But not all darkness remains behind. Some shadows stretch farther than expected. And back at Whitmore Hall, something had begun to unravel. Control, once threatened, does not remain still. It reacts quietly, strategically, ruthlessly. Words can travel faster than truth, carefully placed, carefully shaped, designed not to question, but to destroy. But truth does not disappear. It waits, hidden beneath lies, patient. Some battles are not fought with force, but with persistence, with knowledge, with the willingness to look where others do not. And slowly, the illusion began to break. Signatures that did not belong, authority that had been stolen, a truth that had been buried, now uncovered. Truth does not shout, but when revealed, it cannot be ignored. There comes a moment when everything hidden must stand in the light. And for Whitmore Hall, that moment had come. Power built on deception cannot endure truth, and when confronted, it falls. What was stolen was restored, not as mercy, but as justice. And with truth came release. The walls no longer confined her. They belonged to her once more. The life ahead of her was no longer dictated. It was chosen, step by step. Through everything, one thing had quietly endured, not forced, not declared, but real. For the first time, her future was not uncertain. It was shared. Not everything can be undone, but much can be rebuilt. Karma stronger. Karma wiser. Karma free. Whitmore Hall breathed again, not because it had changed, but because she had reclaimed it. This was never just a story of loss, or cruelty, or survival. It was a story of reclaiming what was always hers, of finding strength where none should remain, and of discovering that even in the darkest paths, something waits, not to end the story, but to begin it.